Well, hi everyone. Today is November 3rd, 2019, and this is episode 205 of At Percussion. I'm Carly Vigna, and I'm here today with co-host Ben Charles.
Hi, everybody.
And Casey Cangelosi.
Hey, Carly, I'm eating all my leftover Halloween candy. It's really bad.
So that's what we're all doing
it's
this
all
weekend.
Here. I brought it for my
everywhere.
students. Like, I'll put it in the studio so that I don't eat it at home, and then I come here to do the podcast. And nice Oliver has a same deal. It's really bad.
No,
but yeah, hey everybody.
Great. It's great. This episode is part 2 of our roundtable discussions with members of the PAS Education Committee, and this hour's discussion will focus primarily on percussion education in college. Here with us tonight are Tom Marceau, Chase Banks, Oliver Molina, and Scott Farkas. Welcome to the show, everyone. It's so wonderful to have you here to share your knowledge and experience with us. Let's start off. I'd like each of you to tell us where you're calling in from today, and also maybe a little bit about the kind of teaching or projects you're up to these days. Oliver, why don't you start?
All right. I am currently calling from Northwestern State University in Louisiana, where I teach. I guess my official title is Assistant Professor of Music, and I'm also Assistant Band Director, so I teach percussion studio lessons. I teach percussion ensemble. I teach the grad percussion classes, and then I also help run the marching band with the drum line and also conduct a concert band. And I used to teach a music ed class, but now I don't do that anymore. So that's nice. And so definitely have my plate full here with all the stuff.
Yeah, that's a lot. Well, thanks. Welcome. Tom, why don't you tell us next? Where are you calling from, and what kind of teaching are you up to these days?
Sure. So Tom Marceau, I'm from Long Island, New York, and I kind of teach a mix of things. I'm doing high school band, 9 through 12, and I teach the percussion studio at Suffolk Community College, and I teach percussion at Five Towns College. And for the past few years, I've been doing a pre-college at Stony Brook, and I just left that. So I've kind of been a little bit all over the place.
Hey, I understand that. Chase, why don't you go next?
Awesome. So I'm calling from Tallahassee, Florida. I'm currently a doctoral student at Florida State University. So a lot of my teaching is junior high through high school with undergrad lessons as well. And my big project that I've been working on recently is called the Green Vibes Project, which is essentially an eco-friendly music commissioning organization focused on commissioning music mainly for vibraphone, metallic percussion, pretty much everything except rosewood. So
interesting. Cool. And Scott?
So I'm calling you from balmy South Central Idaho. I am the chair of visual and performing arts at the College of Southern Idaho, and I teach percussion there too. I teach percussion ensemble, percussion lessons, and a general education West African drumming class. And most of the work that we're doing out here is centered on this idea that our communities are better when everyone plays music for their whole lives. So we're trying to solve this problem of people who play music all throughout high school and then put their instruments away and never pick them up again. How do we encourage more community members to play more music? So that's what we're working on.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I want to start off with a question that I've been thinking about a whole lot lately. And I'm wondering, with more options than ever in degree programs at many schools, certainly more options than when I was starting college, how can we best relate applied lessons in college to students who are majoring in non-performance degrees like music technology and music business? Oliver, what do you think?
Great question. Actually, I've been thinking about how I might answer this question as well. And so something that I've been trying to do here, because we have music ed majors, and that's our main, I guess, bread and butter major in the whole school of music, but then also within the percussion studio. We have music performance majors, only a few of those, but then we have a good number of music business majors. And so I've been trying to figure out how, do I change my curriculum for my lessons for the music business people, because they may not need to have to play velocities by the time they graduate from here or whatever. And so something that I'm still developing as I'm going along is the first 2 years, just like most programs, we have I guess under level lessons or lower level lessons, and then we do the barrier system, and then after that they take their upper level lessons. And so something that I've been trying to do is the first 2 years they pretty much do all the same stuff, but then after they pass their barrier, and for their upper level lessons, they kind of do whatever they want. And so the way I've structured it is, I guess the main idea is that all my students won't be doing the exactly same thing because they have different backgrounds and they also have different interests. And so they definitely learn all the basics, all the fundamentals during the first 2 years. And then I guess I call it more of an elective system, just like any other classes you would take if you want to take psychology or if you want to take biology or whatever. And so my lessons are structured right now. If you finish your barrier, if you want to do more drum set, you can study drum set. If you want to do the one that I'm still crafting right now is like a world music one. We're actually going to be starting a steel band here next year, and so I'm going to hopefully have a steel band component or steel pan component with frame drums and other world percussion hand drums, stuff like that. But that one, nobody has taken that yet. The one that I like that 3 of my students are taking this semester is a multi-percussion lesson, which is only the second time I've taught it. And so each of the students, after they finish the barrier, can kind of, shift their focus depending on what their interests are, but then also what their, degree program kind of entails as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. So they kind of have some self-direction in choosing what they want to do, and that probably helps them stay engaged. It's not just you're learning this 4-mallet marimba solo because I think you should, because that's what percussionists do.
Right.
Yeah, thanks, Oliver. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Oliver was saying. The approach that I've been using is to sort of break down what we want the students to learn in terms of like learning outcomes. So I think there's a lot of different ways to get to an outcome, and something that's really important when I work with other people on this is an outcome isn't an assignment. So I should be able to take an outcome and have lots of different kinds of assignments that can apply to it. So the example that's sticking in my mind right now is, do I need to have a concert because I have a percussion ensemble class? And I'm not sure I do. We started, we have a small school program here, and all of our kids are in lots of ensembles, and I felt like I was burning them out by having lots of different concerts for them to play at the end of the semester all at the same time. So I started trying to answer that question. How do we do something that's going to get the same learning outcome as a concert without having a concert, right? So we can, we're making music videos this year, and we're learning about performance and live performance and preparation and all the stuff that you learn for a concert, just we're not having a concert. And that applies into the private lessons too. Like, what are the technical things? What are the musicianship things? What's the really important stuff you want to get out of it? And then through constant communication with the student, you let them sort of pick the assignments that apply to those outcomes. So in essence, the goal there is to find something that's organic and honest to their preferences, their tastes, and then they're more likely to want to continue improving and continue playing. They may even find their community of players a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and kind of finding their identity, like what's my role in percussion, and how do I express myself the best?
Exactly.
I think that's super valuable.
And when you give them something then that kind of pushes outside of their immediate knowledge area, hey, let's try this on a djembe today, let's try this thing with a vibraphone today, whatever that is, they might be more willing to go with you because you've let them kind of self-direct for part of it too.
Right, yeah. Chase, what do you think?
I love what Scott was saying about essentially having the opportunities for those students and creating more opportunities for them. And I think with the music technology students, as more and more programs are creating these additional either certificates or a BA with a specialization in technology, just doing what we can to create opportunities. So whether that be having those students maybe focus on more repertoire, utilizing technology that have backing tracks, or maybe that use some, mallet cat instruments, Pearl Mallet Station, those kind of things. And maybe letting those students have the opportunities to find their niche, to find what exactly they want to do with that degree.
Yeah, I think having a lot of conversations like what do you want to do later and how can we apply what you're doing in lessons to what you want to do
Right.
is important. Yeah, Tom, what do you have to add?
Well, I've had a lot of students in the community college upstate and here who are producers. They want to be producers or they want to do the recording thing. And I actually try to bring that into the lessons a little bit. And what Scott was saying about the self-direction is really key. So I let them bring that into the lessons and we do a lot of recording in their lessons. So for example, if we're recording maybe a drum set thing, we would set it up and not trying to take away from the other classes, but discuss like how their own playing would work in this particular genre or whatever. Like, do you want a heavy bass drum here? How is it working with the software? That sort of thing. And especially, just self-reflection with the recording and that aspect of it. It gets them into it, it keeps them involved in the playing because now they can hear themselves. They're using their software. So that's really worked well for me over the years.
Yeah, that's great, especially, students that want to be audio engineers or they're major in music technology, like that's key. That's I think the marriage, the connection between the two, the applied lessons and maybe what they're doing or what their career goals are, what they're doing in those technology classes. That's great.
So
Ben, I think you have something.
Yeah, as a sort of follow-up to this, and I'm glad that Tom didn't step on what I was about to say because it sounded like you were going. I'm curious if any, like based on what I'm hearing, and I know that Chase is at FSU with John Parks, who does a lot with recording. Has anyone ever considered, and I don't know if this would even be okay with NASM, but doing recordings and like as a final project instead of a final jury? Because that seems like talking with Evan, what's Evan's last name? The guy that does all the recording.
Chapman,
yeah. It sounded like when he was at IU, that started being his thing. Like, well, I want a product out of what I'm doing. I want actually something I can keep and hold on to. And that's how he got into recording. And it almost seems, because by the time juries roll around, either you can play your piece or you can't. And the panel's burned out from listening to 50 people in one day. So making an actual good recording of a piece with, a video component as well seems like a much better portfolio item than playing a pretty forgettable jury.
Well, and the truth is everybody needs to be able to do that too, not just music technology students, but for a performer to be able to
college
create
without videos, yeah.
Right.
But like the amazing thing, and I guess the positive thing, is doing it once seems so daunting. But once they do it once, they're just like they're flying. Like music industry kids here, I'll have them do clapping music, and they have to do both parts. So they have to record one of them, and they have to listen to that back and then play the other part with the video and make sure they're spliced together and in time and everything. And it's a hard hump, but once they do it, it's just like, oh, great. They're like flying. They're recording each other. They're recording themselves. And all of a sudden they're recording everyone else in the studio. And yeah, but I feel like, I don't know, like I agree with Ben, and it's so easy to say yes to something like that when you don't have some major concern, like they can't do flam taps at a like acceptable like place or a buzz roll or stuff like that. It's like, okay, if all their ducks are in a row, yeah, we have like a lot of freedom with our final project or whatever.
I mean, I will say to that note, I mean, if they can't do flam taps, whether they do them live or on a recorder, like that's kind of irrelevant to what format the final test is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, sure, because you could have them solve that in either case. Yeah, I got you. I guess you're right. I feel like they should do both, though. It's like, yeah, you should be able to record, and you should be able to, if you got to perform it, you got to perform it live too.
But then also, I remember hearing, and I mean, there's also, sorry that I keep getting sidetracked, there's a whole Glenn Gould discussion of, what's the merit of even having live performances anymore, but that's beside the point. But I remember hearing, and I think, who's the guy that teaches at University of Delaware? Harvey Price. Yeah, Harvey Price. I think it was him, and I don't quote me on that because I'm not sure, but I think that he does recordings for his juries, and someone else at the school said, well, that's not fair because then the percussionist can do as many takes as it takes until they get it perfectly. And he said, exactly. you can't turn in something less than, perfect. But, if you can do it over and over and over again. So I don't know. Just interesting thought. But I think that Scott had a thought to share.
Yeah, actually, we're taking that kind of a step even further, Ben. And I've been talking with some of my colleagues around here. The school where I teach is a 2-year school, but we still have recitals and juries and all that stuff at the end of the year and at the end of the program. And we're talking about, like, why a recital? Like, we're taking that even one step further. Is a recital the most valuable demonstration of all the performance outcomes that a student has learned in their career? What about a CD release party or an album release party, right? I guess it's not a CD anymore. What about having a student write, create, record, and cultivate a YouTube channel that has a point of view? And talk about things like that, where I think for the students who we're working with today, being able to create and carefully cultivate a particular digital point of view that is interesting, that people want to be a part of, might even be more valuable than being able to play an hour of music without stopping.
Oliver, I think.
Yeah. Sorry about the emoji. I had no idea that it was going to be like smacking the air the whole time. So that
I can't even think. Now that that's in there, I'm like, that's all I can look at.
I thought it would just be like its hand being raised the whole time, but now it's just in motion, constant motion.
Nobody can focus anymore.
All right. So this is kind of in the same lines of what we're talking about, but kind of going away from it for a second. But something that I wish I had the option of when I was getting my doctorate, but at the University of Iowa, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, you had an option of writing a paper. And that was the same like option for the longest time. And then just a few years ago, they had now an option of creating an album or like a CD, like Scott was talking about. And so I just think it's cool that now, I guess, especially for a performance major for the DMA, it's obviously research, but then at the same time, you're a performance major. And so this new addition, and I think Iowa's obviously not the first place to do it, but I just wish I had that option when I was completing my doctorate. But oh well, whatever. It's done. So
that sounds hugely valuable. I wish I had that option too. Yeah, cool. Chase, what do you think?
So my question, I guess, also for the group here, Scott was talking about different projects, a CD, things of that nature. I know one thing as a doctoral student, especially when we have recital weekends where you have recital after recital after recital, it can get immensely boring of having the same routine of stage door opens up, someone walks on, they bow, we clap, they play, they bow, we clap, they walk off, and it goes over and over and over again. So to end some of the monotonous behavior of that, I love the idea of having a music video, performance video, where a student would go out, maybe they record a video outside, they find a different venue. I feel like the world of percussion, we're breaking out of this typical mold of recitals and concerts more and more every year. I don't know, what are your guys' thoughts on that as far as trying to get out of that monotony?
I think the recital experience is still really valuable, but I don't know how you all feel in different locations, but I feel like it's harder and harder to get people in South Florida out to a concert. So there's so many other ways that you can experience music, and I think most of our students are just on YouTube and online checking things all the time, and that might be where they hear way more content than they're actually going and hearing live performances, for better or for worse. So I see the value in that regard.
Well, I guess on that note, having that requirement, obviously, of putting on your recital, having the formal performance, if you will, but why not include a side project where you have to do a music video not in a recital hall, or adding something that could be included in a lessons grade or a methods or something to that degree?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, Carly, I'm kind of reacting to the thing that you just said, which is I have these heavy reactions to, like, we put on all of these concerts and we really, I think, fry out a lot of kids on them. Some of these students who are playing 7 or 8 or 9 concerts in the week before their final exams and all that. And it's really all about us, the teachers, at that point. Like, look at this great concert that I can put on. and no one comes to them. You know, you're in a hall with 1,000 seats and 100 people are sitting in the hall, and it's really tough. So yeah, that's kind of the question we're asking is, how do you make it relevant? How do you make it part of your community? How do you do community embedded performance stuff instead of saying, well, we're here and we're doing it and you all aren't coming out, you know? And we use our students a lot to help us answer those questions. What are some organic ways that you might engage in something? If you wanted to go see something, how would you know about it? Can we get into those realms? Instead of concerts up on our campus, we're doing more and more concerts like just embedded in our downtown area and things like that. Partnering with local churches and local community organizations to try and become a part of what they're doing, and maybe not do as large and substantive performances, but do more meaningful community participatory performances.
So I just had maybe I'll be the contrarian in the room, but just a thought. It seems like the last, couple of episodes in a row, it's come up, this whole thing of the digital music age and how easy it is and how accessible everything is, and how if you're listening to one thing that you're not immediately interested in, you just turn it off and go to the next thing, and you can just find the next thing, and you're always on your tippy toes being entertained. And I wonder if this kind of relates to live performance too. If you keep looking for ways to change it, yeah, it'll probably put people in seats, yeah, it'll probably keep everyone interested, but I wonder if you're kind of making the same detriment as back when, man, when I ordered my whatever CD from wherever and it cost $15 plus $5 shipping, and all I had was that CD, that was the only piece of new music in my catalog. If I didn't like the first track and the second track and the third track, or say I just hated the whole CD, I couldn't just click to the next whatever. I had to like dig deeper, and I had to listen harder, and I had to dig out what was interesting about it. So I don't know if the solution should always be, oh, you guys aren't into this? Well, let's change it. Or, oh, the symphony orchestra can't get enough people in the seats, so let's add video. And it's like, I don't know if throwing more candy at everyone is like helping, especially our people. Like, I don't know if that's helping our students. It's like, oh, you don't get it? Well, that means you need to listen to it again. Like you need to try to dig deeper, and you need to find out what is in this, because you shouldn't just like click to the next thing. I don't know, not to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a.
I don't know.
Just to kind of sum it up with a non-answer, it's a balance thing.
Yeah, sure. Well, and I'm like super guilty. I mean, Ben, when they came out with YouTube, I didn't do any work for 2 weeks straight.
Michael Scott.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, crotchety old people like to kind of like, point the finger at streaming music and say, when I was a kid, we bought records and, we appreciated them. And it's like, yeah, but it is also nice that I can have access to this stuff, at the drop of a hat. And, so it's, I don't think that streaming has made music worse. I think that maybe we've allowed streaming to make music, if that makes sense. I don't think I'm speaking very well, but yeah, it's all a compromise. And I mean, it's important to be able to perform well on the first take live. Like most people now cannot pull a Glenn Gould or the Beatles and just say, sure, hey, I'm only going to record. That's not a viable option. But at the same rate, if you can't record at all, which I couldn't coming out of a master's degree, I think you're equally in trouble. So, yeah.
Well, and I like what Scott said, and I guess what everyone's kind of saying about like, to switch it up, let's change how everything goes and everything. I like that for like employment prospects later. Like that seems really important. But yeah, I don't know as far as what it's really doing for the students. I'm not sure. I don't know. Yeah, what are you saying there, Scott?
Well, I was saying music there's always been really good music, and there's always been really bad music, and probably in about the same amounts. Right. It's easier to listen to it now, right? So we're probably saying like it's getting worse when we're just listening to more bad music. We're also listening to more great music.
Yeah. I think I've been a bad example to students sometimes because I'll do a recital that involves like lighting or visual aids or whatever and that's the rep, like happens to be the contemporary piece, and I'll get a student real excited and like, great, on my recital I want to like do this with the light and then that and it's like, well, by the time you're playing your 80th recital, you can toy with that, but I need to make sure you can just do it like good solid performance with no extra tricks or extra bells or whistles. And that's important because this is your first one. You need to be able to just do like bare bones, not cut and dry, because I mean we all know good performance is not cut and dry, but just like raw good musicianship.
Yeah, something more standard. I agree with
I
that.
guess I know, and I hate it. Sounds crotchety and old, and it sounds stale, and yeah, I know, like it is standard, it is what everyone else is doing, but I don't know if like different always means better or progressive. Or Tom, I think you have something.
Sure. I mean, I guess I kind of feel like I don't think that YouTube or technology has necessarily ruined people going to concerts. I mean, I guess I remember from my undergrad, it was hard getting people there, and that's over 20 years ago. So that's long before YouTube. And I feel like, having finished the DMA at Stony Brook, which is very much a new music school, I mean, you go out and do a concert there, might have more people on stage than you do in the audience. And that was like a typical concert, But having said that, doing it enough, people get, aware of the rep and they start coming out for certain composers, certain performers. Mm-hmm. So that is a good thing, I guess. But it's a tough question saying, has it killed it? Has it made it better? I don't know.
And I wasn't trying to say YouTube is affecting actual live performances. I was just trying to make the comparison of,
sure,
in the digital age, you can just click to the next thing like the second you're bored. And if that's what we're going to try to do with live performances too, say like, oh, the traditional model is stale, so let's add something, let's add some video or whatever, like it might kind of have the same effect on our students of like they don't have to examine it more closely because they've got another distraction,
Right.
Yeah.
I think though that on that note, for if you're recording a piece for your own jury, I think that doing it over and over and hearing the piece, and I think you actually, I mean, I know that some of the stuff I've recorded, I've gotten definitely more familiar with through the recording process.
Sorry, I'm confused. Like, wait, yeah, you should record, right? Like, I mean, nobody's saying we shouldn't record, right?
No, but I'm just saying, like, just to kind of follow with what you said, I think a lot of the time when we record something, we actually learn the piece even better because you do multiple takes. Yeah. Now I see other part, something like that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I guess I try to have my students do both, It's like, yeah, do a recital and then you should record it the next week, the whole thing, like, yeah.
Sorry, I think Scott had something that kind of jumped in there.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I was, since Casey started arguing with me about this, right? I wanted to counter it a little bit and say, I'm maybe not adding bells and whistles to a performance, but when we're talking about like, why aren't there people at our shows? How can we fix that? And which partnerships can we create to build our audience? Isn't that a valuable thing to teach our students? How to find those partnerships, how to connect with the local city, how to connect with the local church or whatever to help you build an audience to learn to trust the music that you're putting on?
I do. I think that's certainly important. I think you can't do everything at once. Like there's so many things that are so important. And yeah, of course it's so important to have a web presence and to do, and that's the one I hear a lot. Like we need to get our students like building websites, And my standard response is like, well, wait a minute. Like if you had to take a class on how to build a website, I don't think that's a well spent dollar for a class, because those web builders are like meant to be easy. I mean, they're meant to be like figure outable on your own, that they compete with each other to be easier. They're meant to be super, super, super easy. So I almost feel like it's irresponsible. Like if they can just do it, like, okay, like you can spend a day on it or something and encourage them. But like, yeah, they should just go do that too. So I think you're right. Like it's definitely important. It's not a matter of finding out what's important. It's a matter of like, hey, how can I best serve you and like the short amount of time we have. And I think I agree with you. Like, you tell them that is important, and that's going to be important later, and you got to figure that out at some point, for sure. Sorry, I'm talking a lot.
It's great. It's all good stuff. Moving along, I want to ask, one of the biggest responsibilities I find, even in job listings, but of course in the job too, is building a studio and recruiting quality, committed students. Oliver, I wonder, do you have any advice for professors who are trying to recruit students? What's your recruitment advice?
Sure. Well, I don't necessarily have that problem too much because in the state of Louisiana, I guess our marching band is pretty well known. Actually, the marching band this year, we had our largest enrollment, or our largest number was 342 people in the band, which means I don't necessarily need to go out and recruit so much. The marching band kind of does it for me. Obviously, I'm a part of the marching band, or I teach the marching band, so that helps. But I guess the bad news of that side is that I guess the students see the marching band and they kind of think of that's what I want to do when I go to college, is marching band. And they don't know what it takes to become, or what it takes to be a music major. And so I guess the retention rate, especially after that first year, is usually half. So I think a few years ago we had maybe 7 or 8 freshmen to come in, and now I think only 3 or 4 are left because they didn't know what they were getting themselves into. And so recruiting wise, obviously, I guess my answer is ensembles, but the biggest thing that we have here is the marching band. But other things that I'm doing this year, I haven't done it yet, but actually one idea I stole from Scott Herring. He actually does every December, at least the last few years I've noticed, is that he goes and does a clinic tour to various high schools. And another idea that I stole from another person is Brad Meyer. Last year he went to, I just remember seeing the post on Facebook, like every other day he was performing with some local high school, or like a high school in this area. And so I have, I think, 3 or 4 high schools lined up for next spring that I'm planning on doing that, or performing with them. But then also I just go out and recruit and visit high schools in general as well, as my schedule allows. But those are kind of, I guess, 2 different things that I'm going to try out this year for recruiting besides the marching band.
Yeah, those are great. I think, anytime you can have a personal interaction with students, whether it's a clinic or whether you go to them and play with them or teach them, or they come to your campus and interact with you, if they have a positive musical experience with you, like that's huge. That's great. And what you said too about marching band, it's funny sometimes how a student's experience in high school marching band or in high school wind ensemble even is so different from when they come to college, especially if they haven't had a lot of private lessons or been in like a serious kind of conservatory environment before. And that's a challenge, I think, when they come in and realize this is different than playing a marching band or just playing in the percussion section and wind ensemble. Yeah. Anybody else have something to contribute? Any good recruitment advice? Casey, I think you had something.
I was actually just posting that picture of the old man saying that is me, not I have something to say. But yeah, recruiting. I don't know. No, I should stop. Chase, I think you have something.
Well, I'm curious. Oliver brought up Dr. Herring's clinic tour that he does and things like that. Do you guys do all-state region band prep clinics, those type of things? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like for the most part, everybody.
If I could just, oh God, and Texas, like the region band thing is humongous. And I'm not from Texas, and I have trouble saying anything bad about music education in Texas, because I mean it is fantastic, don't get me wrong, but the issue I take is that they already know, like, it's on a rotation what the region audition music will be for next year. So I already know this year right now what the music will be, not even next year but even 2 years from now, what the music's going to be. And so the issue I take is that the band directors want and demand these clinics, but I don't have the schedule all straight in my head, but let's say the auditions are in November. They're wanting kids to come for a region band clinic in February. Like literally, I mean, months in advance. And we're talking about the music is like, a half of a Peters etude or something. It's not a it's not a months of preparation sort of audition in my mind, and we lose so much. And if a student comes to me and I try to teach fundamentals, the band director will, oh, well, can you get to the region band stuff though? It's like, well,
Yeah.
the buzz roll sucks. The region stuff's not going to sound very good.
Yeah.
So, but
Well,
I mean,
then-
that said, like well, then the other like crotchety old man thing here is like, if you come for, a 30-minute clinic over the region band, what can I really teach you about this that that really gets into depth? So it's one of those things. I think we do it as a recruiting strategy. People love it, people want it, but at the same rate, I just don't think it's all that beneficial to the high school students. What I do like is, like, we have what we call Percussion Day here, which Casey was actually my guest artist for that last year, and high school students are invited. And it's, we have a guest artist that'll do a great snare drum warm-up class and a clinic, and we'll perform, and I perform and do a clinic. And so it's, to me, that's so much more enlightening, outside of just the tunnel vision of a region band thing. But sorry, that every time we talk about region band auditions in Texas, I just get like kind of moderately upset about it, because, like I said, it's so good, and I feel bad like bad mouthing it, because that's not what I mean. But I just remember when I was in high school, I studied with, he taught at VCU, Don Bick. He's passed away, unfortunately, but he was the timpanist in the Richmond Symphony, played in the Marine Band also. And yeah, we never looked at my like district audition music. It just wasn't a thing. He just taught me how to play music well, and that was something I learned on my own.
I got about a quarter as pissed off as you are when I lived in Houston, because they would hire private teachers, and I was just a grad student. Okay, come teach our kids after school because whatever region is coming up, and the music was way hard. And I remember saying, okay, well, show me what you got of this so far, and the student being like, what do you mean? It's like, well, let me hear how it's going so I can like know where to start with you and like how to teach it. Oh, I can't do it. It's like, yeah, oh, yeah, right, yeah, they just want to learn it by rote. And it's like, wait, you're not going to learn this by rote. Like, we're not going to get it done in this amount of hours. And, you talk to the parents afterwards, like, oh, how is he or she doing? Do you think they'll make state? Do you think they'll make it? Like, what? They can't even read any music. Like, why? What's the point of this? But I mean, and now I'm like a little older, a little wiser. I feel like a lot of kids and parents' strategies is they're just trying to get a long list of check marks of like, did this club, won this trophy, did this extra activity, so they can get into college in another major. It's like, that sucks. It's I guess that's the real world, but it really sucks.
Yeah, Chase, what do you think?
I wanted to just make one more comment just about recruitment, because like Ben was saying, at least in his situation, those days can probably be frustrating. Do the students really get a lot out of it? But it's that, I guess it's the balance. Does the FaceTime with them, even if they don't get a lot out of it, does that help with recruitment? Does it not? The other thing I wanted to bring up, I guess, was with social media, what it has become and what it will probably continue to grow to be. I know Dr. Herring at South Carolina would do all-state videos every single year and whatnot, and I assume there are professors in every state that do that kind of thing. But with Instagram and Facebook being kind of out of the picture now, having those videos, I feel like that really is a large recruitment tool. I mean, do any of you guys utilize that kind of stuff for videos of all-state or anything of that nature?
Let's throw it to Tom.
Sorry, I was muted there, guys.
Were you distracted by the chat?
I was very distracted by the chat.
I think we all were.
I can't multitask at this age, so I apologize. But I have a different situation because I'm not actively recruiting in the sense that you guys are. I have a relationship with most of the high school band directors where I'm from, and the kids, they're not, how do I say this? They're not working on their audition rep for 1 or 2 years to try and get into the Suffolk Community College in the percussion studio.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know if I can answer that question adequately. Maybe someone else can take that one.
Yeah, anybody, please.
Can I hop in with a thought?
Yeah, of course.
Please.
Okay.
Yeah, Scott.
So I mean, we as studio, university, college, whatever, percussion teachers, arts teachers, really, we've got the opportunity to kind of be leaders in that area. And an important idea to me is like leadership as a form of service. So I try and answer that question is how can I be of service to people? And if I can do that really well, they might want to be a part of what I have to do. Or what I'm doing or have to say. So I try to get as involved as I can in my state MEA as much as possible. I try to get as involved as I can in my local chapter of that state MEA as I can. When I hear local teachers or teachers around the state, looking to solve particular problems, I see as many different ways as I can to try and help them. And that's even gone into, Idaho is a really rural state. And we have lots of really rural band programs with small groups. And so they'll talk about how do I make my group sound good? And so I'll host conversations with band directors all over the state about like, well, let's just throw away the idea that it has to be concert band music even, right? Like, let's get your kids together and play some chamber music. What could that look like? Or, all different things. So and I think by like trying to actually put myself in service to the problems that the directors who I'm working with in my state have, more people may want to be a part of what we have to offer here. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of been my approach.
We keep bouncing between the talking about recruiting and then talking about the all region, all state band things. We get bounced back to that other thing. I was just going to share, and we can talk about this if we want, or we can just sort of hear it and leave it. But there's been a Facebook post going around from someone by the name of Michael McCula, and I'm not sure. I'm assuming it looks like he's a horn teacher somewhere in Texas. But whenever the TMA results come out, the TMEA all-state results come out, people are always posting about, oh, and look how good all these music students' SAT scores are, which gets into another soapbox of mine that I won't even mention. But he says in this Facebook post, he says, I've attached the spreadsheet I made the last time this got shared around. The 20 high schools listed on the spreadsheet accounted for 43% of the Texas All-State members, despite being about 0.7% of the Texas high school population. And he goes on later, he says, 11 of those 20 schools were rated in the top 8% of Texas high schools by U.S. News and World Report. Does a strong music program single-handedly raise the rest of the school to an elite level? No. And then he goes on and he talks about the primary indicator of success is not the music, it's the environment. Wealthy music students are more likely to be able to afford private high-quality instruments. In a wealthy school, music students are more likely to be surrounded by other people who take lessons. There will be higher expectations of preparedness because there will be higher expectations in general. When success is being normalized, it is much easier to attain. Students will be more likely to be able to pursue musical opportunities out of the school. They are more likely to have families with free time and energy to make sure they are practicing with dedication. There's a little line in here, I kind of skipped over this part, about this is actually has a lot to do with socioeconomic status, which is intertwined with structural racism. So yeah, the all-state thing, I mean, it's a huge honor to make, but there's definitely some, the wealthier schools are certainly at an advantage for that.
Oh yeah, I think it's just kind of a moot point. Like, I think what he said here, yeah, you would expect that, right? I mean, that's
the frustrating thing for me is that, but also just, and I said I wouldn't say this, but now I'm here. It's like I really don't think that talking about, and I know any advocacy is good advocacy, but I don't think that talking about SAT scores and music is. I don't think people should be in band because it makes their SAT scores better. And
his point is it doesn't.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but
yeah, like his whole, I mean, if I'm understanding it right, his whole point was,
the environment.
This is just bad science. Like, if you're saying, like, look, this place with a good band program also had good SAT scores, and thus music is the cause of that. It's like, well, it's just, really, really bad. Correlation, causation thing.
To just sum up what I'm trying to say, it's like the Robin Williams speech from Dead Poet Society, what will your verse be, sort of thing. But I'll get off the soapbox. Sorry, Scott, I think you had something you were going to say.
Let me be carefully pick my words here. So, we have a system in the state of Idaho where every Idaho student is encouraged to take college courses before they graduate high school. They all get significant financial incentives to do that, and actually a pretty significant, at my school, over 50% of our course delivery now is to high school students. And at the beginning of that conversation, it was the same argument that you're putting forward is look at the few students who are taking college courses in high school. They do better than most college students in college. This is going to be a great thing because high school students who take college courses do really well. And it's just a survey size fallacy, right? Like the first small group of people who are doing it are the people who are likely to do well because they're the ones who have figured out this whole system and this whole process. And when you expand it to everyone, you're going to find that it's going to level out to about the same as it would everywhere else. You'll have about the same levels of successful and unsuccessful students. And I think that has to do with the size of the group that you're working on.
Yeah, wow, I'm so glad you explained that. That makes, I wish people would be more mindful of that. Carly, do you want to move us sort of, I don't know, onto a different track?
Sure, yeah. So I have another question.
Me, sorry.
Before.
I said, or do you just want more ranting from me?
Or something less inflammatory.
Yeah, either move us on or just mute Ben.
Remove from call. No, I'm wondering what you all think about percussion methods or percussion techniques, like the class that, we all probably have some experience with teaching or being involved in some degree. What's most important for people, especially non-percussionists, to get out of that class? Chase, what do you think?
I think for undergraduate percussionists, I'm trying to think back to when I've done these courses. I tend to do a kind of, you do your overview of mallets, of snare drum, and timpani, essentially to get them by in whatever instance they're in. But I find that I typically talk a lot about tips and tricks, just kind of the little tidbits of information that, quick fixes, if you will. So what happens if you don't have a set of wood blocks or you need a particular instrument? Like, what are some alternatives you can do? I typically strive to go for that, just because there's so many of these students that go through the methods course that go on to teach, and maybe they don't have a percussion instructor or someone, they don't have that experience. So those are the kind of things I try to focus on. That makes sense.
Yeah. What about maintenance, like gear maintenance? Anything like that you think is really important?
Oh, absolutely. Yet again, you hope that these non-percussionists go out and have a percussion instructor, a drumline person to kind of handle a lot of that for them. But of course, covering like basics, how to change drum heads, things of that nature.
Sure. Yeah. Tom, what do you have to add?
Just to go back a step in terms of like what they should be getting out of it in terms of pedagogy and technique. I taught these classes for a while at Ithaca, and for me, the most important thing, and again, I live in New York, so it may be different from the rest of the country, but was really the snare drum technique, because most of the kids are going to be starting with that. And if you have a band director who's not a percussion specialist necessarily, they need to be able to play a moderate amount of snare drum. And it seems like they can kind of get by with beginner timpani, beginner mallets, with those bell sets and that sort of thing. But if they can't play snare drum, the kids are going to have a tough time in the beginning. So I would say really focus on that. My 2 cents.
Right. That's the bread and butter. Oliver, what do you think?
Sorry, I got distracted by the chat again.
How?
This is a tough one.
All right, so here I actually don't teach the percussion methods class because we actually have 2 percussion teachers here. But when I did teach it as a graduate student, we were kind of tasked to teach it at the basic middle school level. Kind of think about how you can get them through their first, 3 years, middle school, junior high level, so that the teachers have the basic foundation of sound production, grip, and everything from there. And obviously doing the maintenance and everything else that hopefully a band director could know how to do, could know. But they didn't go necessarily too far into like the advanced concepts or anything like that.
Yeah, I teach the class at FIU, and I'm always trying to balance, I want students to play as much as possible, but then there's so much that they need to know. They need to know, what to look for, and maintenance is such a big thing. But what I always try to tell the students is I want you to know, have in your mind what you need to know on a day-to-day basis, and then know where to look for everything else. Oliver, do you want to talk a little bit about the Educator's Companion? Speaking of resources of where to look for things when you need to look something up.
Yeah, and so I think this started, I can't remember now, it may have been 2015. So the Education Committee, I guess these guys and also the people who were in that committee beforehand started a separate resource of articles called the Educator's Companion. And this is a free resource mainly directed toward music educators, band directors, orchestra conductors, or whoever who is teaching percussion. And the articles are very vast. I know there was a series of articles on auxiliary percussion covering a bunch of different things. I know Emily did an article, I think with the last edition, talking about how to select beginning percussionists. I don't know if she was part of the last interview that you guys just did, because I thought I saw her name on there, so she may have talked about that. But it's just a nice resource that hopefully will just get more traction, and more, hopefully PAS will help promote that, because at times I feel PAS is very PAS, and I don't think, especially I think as the Education Committee, hopefully we can be the forerunners of promoting, percussion education to other areas that isn't just percussion.
On that same lines, I was going to ask, was it hard? I guess, was there a decision or debate making this resource free? Like, I kind of wondered, I was telling a student about it before we started here, and they said, oh, is that like, where is that found in the PAS percussive notes or rhythm scene, or like, where is it? And I said, no, it's just free to find right there. There it is, and was there, I don't know, do you have to go through like layers of permission or anything to pull that off?
Great question. Actually, I don't know the answer for sure, because all this stuff was happening before I was a member. I don't know if you guys were members before, like during this whole process, but I vaguely remember, I vaguely remember them having a disagreement if it was free or not free. So I don't know, Tom, do you remember?
Yeah, sorry, I jumped in on you there. There was some talk about the exec board wanting to charge people to actually see the resources and see the articles and that sort of thing. So they started doing that, and then the numbers dropped considerably. So they kind of went back the other way, and they made it free to everyone again, which is smart, because you want people to be seeing. I mean, that's why we write these articles, so people can see them readily. And the chance of a flutist coming in, paying for membership into PAS to see these articles, it's not likely.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Yeah. No, we want them to be able to just click on a link or something comes up in a search query like, oh, there's an article on the topic I was looking at. Just stumble upon it and read it. And anyway, if people are going to the PAS website to find the Educator's Companion, they are probably more likely to be aware of the organization and maybe to get involved in some way if they're inclined to.
It can be such a debate, like, is there going to be a net gain, by doing that? And I would agree there would be. Yeah, you would ultimately grow, Yeah.
I was just going to mention, Casey, I don't think you mentioned this, that on the topic of percussion methods courses, I know that Caleb is working on, is it his dissertation?
Yeah, so we're working on, so speaking of this whole thing, thanks for reminding me, Ben, that is what I was going to say, Carly. Yeah, speaking of this whole thing, like, how do we teach methods, and what do we choose to do? Do we focus on equipment maintenance, or what do we start with snare drum? How much time do you spend on snare drum, etc.? But Caleb's doing a paper based around survey of syllabi, survey of indexes in table of contents in percussion method books like the Gary Cook book, etc., and just kind of trying to figure out like what's generally taught, and then also doing a survey out to people, directors who've been through the whole crash course in percussion methods, and just saying like what are you getting enough of, what are you getting not enough of, etc. And just to kind of, I guess, test the waters on how we're all doing, Yeah, so hopefully, we get something from that.
I think that's great.
Oh,
Sorry,
sorry.
Tom?
Go ahead.
I said I would think that he'd probably get different results based on, the state that he's in and whether there are percussion specialists in that state or if the band directors are doing it.
Yep, and that's the big trick, is to, like, okay, without hiring like a statistician and a company to do like a nationwide, fully, giant professional survey. Yeah, how can you sift through it and make it something useful? Yeah, and that's why it's not totally survey based.
Well, I can't wait to see the results. I remember getting an email from Caleb a while back asking for a syllabus, I think. Probably a lot of you all did too.
Did you all blow it off?
I sent it to him.
I was there a survey too? I think I did the survey. Yeah. He was like, I think like he emailed it to me, and I was just like, when I happened to be sitting at my desk answering emails, and like I immediately replied.
Oh, cool.
Like, oh, wow. No. And then I was like, well, I didn't do it now. I never would. So
it's going really well. Yeah, he's gotten a lot of results. It'll be good, I think.
So one thing that's come up a couple of times, we've mentioned the role of the percussion specialist, especially in high schools. And I know we're talking about the college curriculum and college percussion and college education, but I just saw recently that University of North Alabama and maybe some other schools are doing this too, but they're going to be beginning to offer a certification as a percussion specialist. And my understanding is that it's available to percussion majors and non-music majors, and anybody can take these collection of classes to get the certification. So I was looking at the courses that they take, and one is theatrical design. Looks like a couple of credits in composition, class percussion, introduction to music technology, instrumental literature pedagogy, audio recording, live production technology. And I just think it's so interesting because these are really important skills for percussion educators to have. What do you all think about this? And is this going to be a trend that, continues and gets bigger? What do you think, Oliver?
That's a great question. So I've been thinking about this question a lot too, because I guess I wrestle with this idea a lot, like almost every week, about percussion, whether the specialization of it is a good thing or if it needs to be, I guess, more general so that hopefully more people accept it. I don't know. I kind of feel that we kind of pigeonhole ourselves sometimes so much that we can only do what we do and nobody else can understand it. And then from there, we need to hire somebody else. And so I'm not saying that what Tracy's doing isn't the right thing to do, because definitely if he doesn't, or if we don't do it, or if we don't have like I guess a guiding force, people are going to do it anyways, I think, and it may be worse off than if somebody was guiding them. But again, the idea that I like wrestle with every week is, should we be all about ourselves more, or should we hopefully broaden our reach so that people understand what we do? And maybe the Percussion Methods course, kind of coming back to that, hopefully we just teach them so well that we don't need to have percussion specialists. I don't know, that's a lot of stuff to think about, but I literally think about this every week, like how can we do what we need to do so that people understand what we do, but at the same time we're kind of specializing ourselves into our own little niche. And so sorry, that was a lot to think about.
No, it's good. Well, it's the balance between the two. And, I went to high school in New Hampshire, where bringing a percussion specialist into the school didn't happen outside of having like a marching band tech come in. And now I'm living in Florida, where there are some private schools that bring in adjuncts that are percussion specialists essentially, regularly, but it's not the same as in other parts of the country. So it's interesting. And yeah, ultimately, of course, with the Percussion Methods class, we want band directors to know what they need to know to be able to handle the class. But then there's so much value that I see in having a percussionist go in and, maybe you're doing percussion ensemble, you're pulling the students out of the band. There's just so much specific knowledge that we have. Tom, I think you have something.
Yeah, I mean, based on the classes that you were just talking about, for me personally, I feel like all of the percussion majors should be taking those things anyway, like almost like it should just be part of the core curriculum, because they're going to be doing all of those things, whether they're performance major, ed major, or technology. I mean, everyone composes a little bit. You've got a student who can't read out of a typical method book that you're using, you're going to be writing for them. You have to be able to record in this day and age. I mean, it really should be part of the curriculum. And in terms of the percussion specialist, I mean, I teach a lot of woodwind kids, a lot of brass, and if I have an oboist, I can't do the same thing that an oboe specialist can do. I just can't. And I've taken oboe tech, and it's just, I'll never be able to do the same thing for them. So I send them somewhere else. And I think that's the reality with the percussion specialist too. Just my thought on it.
Yeah, thanks. Oliver, what do you think?
Yeah, just to respond to Tom about, I definitely agree with all the stuff that it's on Tracy's curriculum that we need to know how to do. But when are we going to have time to do it in our curriculum? If we do that with all the other stuff, the student's going to be in school for like 8 years or forever. I know our music ed course or degree here, they already they're taking 22 hours each semester just to graduate, hopefully graduate on time. But even if they don't graduate on time, they're here 5, maybe 6 years or so. And so I guess now calling myself an old man, even though I'm probably younger than most of you, besides probably Chase, is that when I was in school, we learned how to do it because we had to learn how to do it. Nobody necessarily told us like, hey, you need to figure out how to record, you need to figure out how to make a website. They told us that it was valuable, and so we kind of did it. So I don't know. It's just hard if we expect all our students to know this stuff. When are they going to have time to learn it when they should be working on their buzz rolls or whatever else? So I don't know.
There's just so much. There's so much. But I had a similar thought, Tom, when I looked at all those classes. It was like, I wish I was required to take a composition class in undergrad. I wasn't. I never did. So many of those things are so valuable for all of us. And when are we going to, when are we going to do it if there's not a class for it that we have to take? And two, to Oliver's point, how many credits can we cram into a music education degree? I remember those 20 plus credit semesters. That's a lot. Scott, what do you think about all this?
Lots of things.
It's fun to rip on Tracy while he's not here. Give it to him. He's not here to defend himself. It's good.
That is not why I brought this up. I just think it's innovative and
no, let's keep it going. I noticed. So am I reading it right? There's no large ensemble or any ensemble requirement?
Well, I think for just the certification, that's right. But imagine,
Okay.
if you're a percussionist, music education major, and you also want this certification, or even I think you can be not a music major at all. Maybe you're an English major, but you
right,
want to teach percussion. You want to work with an area high school marching band, something like that.
Right.
Take these classes. So.
Yeah. Sorry, Scott. What were you gonna say?
Oh, no worries. Yeah, actually, it's good. It gave me a second to breathe. So in terms of being a community college, this is one of the things that we're working on pretty hard out here, is creating a community music educator curriculum. And the idea is that it's not focused at someone who's interested in majoring in music, but that there's people who are going to teach lessons out of their house. There's people who are going to go coach the high school drum line. There's people who are going to do all of that no matter what. And if we can put together the smallest number of classes to have the highest impact, that's going to have the biggest interest to those people, we can help increase that level. And then when more people are making music at a higher level, the community grows because more people want to make music longer throughout their lives and things like that. So the question that I'm trying to answer as I'm working on that similar kind of certificate is, I'm looking at someone who is probably a professional in a different field, who's a grown adult with a family, and who's spending their own money on this thing, and what things are they going to find interesting and vital enough that they're going to invest in this certificate. And so maybe that thing isn't a large ensemble, maybe that thing isn't any of my particular classes that I teach, but maybe that thing is something that's going to teach them some pedagogy or give them a little bit more base level skills to pass on or something like that.
I just have a quick question in terms of the percussion specialist certificate that you guys are talking about. Would this allow them to do anything, the certificate, in terms of teaching aside from private teaching? Like, what does it do for them specifically, I guess, aside from the content that they're learning?
I don't know that it's like a legal certification, like the same as, you get your K through 12 certificate when you take the state test or anything, but it probably affects employability. You put that on your resume. I have this training from this school that's better than I played in my high school band. Right. especially for a non-music major. My understanding is that's probably the main draw is like, it's nice to have on paper that you did that. In addition to it's nice having all that experience.
Yeah, I'm thinking in particular of like if you're an English major that you want to go be an English teacher, but you'd like to teach the drumline at your school and that position's open, it could only help, I guess is what I'm saying.
I'm gonna just say something cynical, but I worry sometimes when I hear about these Frankenstein programs, like it's some of this and some of that and some of that schools, and sorry, Tracy, like I'm not saying that this is what this is at all, but I've heard about enough of them and heard people speak in a way that it just almost sounds like, well, we're not serving some of our music majors as effectively as we could because some of them don't want to do music history or some of them don't want to do large ensemble. And my response is, okay, I get that they don't want to do that, but what you want isn't always what's best for you. Like you hear it all the time, like, oh, I just don't want to do my music theory homework. I want to just play drums and I just want to play marimba. Well, hey, part of being good at marimba is being good at theory. Sorry, like I really support you having to do that, and I support that in our curriculum. I sometimes worry like people chop up and make these Frankenstein curriculums just to like retain students and get more students. Like, oh, you don't like theory? Well, we've got a program just for you. Pay here, Not saying that's what Tracy's group's doing at all, but I don't know. I worry about that. Again,
really
very, very old man.
Can I still have my job though?
What's that?
I said I really don't want to answer emails. Can I still have my job though?
Yeah, but you get paid. They're paying, like you should have to do crap. We should have to do crap we don't want to do because they pay
I don't think I should.
Yeah. They're paying, we get paid. Yeah.
Chase, what do you think?
Chase.
I just wanted to make a quick comment. I mean, I think what is happening at UNA is great. I think kind of what Scott was going off of, it really kind of depends on the target audience of all this. So whether it's, I know at the University of South Carolina in the past year or so, they've started adding to their just general BA program specialization. So you can do a specialization in audio engineering, a specialization in XYZ, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it depends if it's like Scott was saying, how it could be an older generation that are just trying to beef up the resume and get any just additional experience. I mean, that's phenomenal. But I agree as far as the adding credits to the already absorbent amount of credits a music ed student has to take. Yeah, that, I don't know.
Yeah, it's stuff they just gotta go do,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I agree. Yeah, just to be clear, like what Tracy's, what you shared with us there looks really cool. Like that all looks really valuable, no doubt.
Well, I think innovation is good. It's preparing students for the jobs that are going to be available in 10 years or 20 years or 40 years. We already are seeing the landscape change and the skills that we need change, where 20 years ago YouTube wasn't a thing. Now everybody's got to get some kind of recordings on YouTube. That brings me to one more question. I think, how do you think we can best help students prepare for a career in the music world and the percussion world of the future?
Ugh. Ugh, too hard. You have any easier questions?
No.
No, that's it.
Scott, what do you think?
Well, I think that the big bullet point lessons that I'm trying to teach my students, and I say this to them all the time, are just by nature of the fact that you're here, you're a brilliantly creative person who's got a lot of guts in you, and so you should learn how to access that and use that all the time. You need to learn what the differences between professional and unprofessional creativity look like, so that whatever space you find yourself in, you can try to make that look a little bit more professional. And that's the thing that you're contributing. And then I think the most important parts of this are, you can and should make music with every single person your entire life, whether or not they are professional people. Your professional skills can help other people to make music. And anywhere that you end up, you need to find who your people are, find who your community is, and figure out how to make with them. Like, you should make stuff with everyone around you all the time, find your people, learn how to collaborate with them. And then no matter what changes in the universe, you're going to be able to make music. Like, that's going to be a part of your life.
It's cool.
Very cool. Yeah. And building off of that a little bit, I think it's helping students find their authentic voice and what they're passionate about. If they're passionate about what they're creating, chances are very good they're going to be successful. There's going to be an audience. It's going to be compelling. It's going to be powerful. And that's what we want. Whether, we can tell students, yeah, you need to master technology. You need to know how to handle all these things that we think are coming up and going to be more and more important in the future. Chase, do you have anything on this?
Yeah, I love your idea of essentially, maybe you could say, having a niche. I think, at least from my perspective in the percussion world, we have to be good at so many things. You have to be a great performer, you have to be professional, you have to have the social media, you have to have the great website, and you have all these facets that we all have to be awesome at all the time. But then at the end of the day, I feel like you still have to have that niche, whatever that is, whether you're into recording, making videos, kind of like the Evan Chapman thing, or if you want to be a marimba soloist, good luck. Or whatever your niche, whatever you might want it to be. I think that's how we kind of help, and that kind of going off of what Scott said too, of just helping them find their voice and going for it.
And I think you mean not even just a niche, but just a forte. I mean, a niche is great, but a forte, like, there's a lot of marimba soloists, but if you're going to try to be one, you got to be really good at it. You got to be really good at something. Make sure you're not spread so thin that there isn't one thing that emerges to, like, keep you standing out.
Right.
Yeah,
kind of going like a jack of all trades, master of one. Almost.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tom.
Just a couple thoughts, and maybe more on the practical side, I guess. But they have to survive too. They have to be able to make money and eat and live somewhere. And I completely agree with follow your passion and your heart and all of that. It's also good to talk to them about, like, what is going to be most readily available for you to make money. Like, I love playing marimba. Most of the money I make is from playing drum set, though. So those sorts of things are important, I think, to talk about. Also, a lot of the kids, they'll spend a year, 2 years learning one piece. I think it's really important to start teaching them how to, like, get through rep quicker, how to practice, how to break things down quick, because they're not going to have that time if they want to have a normal life and still play. And I think that's something that gets washed over maybe sometimes. But my thoughts.
I think that's a great topic for the next episode, an entire episode: how to have a normal life and be a professional musician. Maybe a mini
I think that's
series.
the podcast from here on out.
Oliver, do you have any thoughts to share on this?
Kind of not necessarily musical, but just hopefully my students get a sense of versatility. Obviously, with percussion, we kind of are bred to do that already because we have to do so many things. But then also with versatility, but then also I can't remember the word, where they're able to, I guess, take on a lot, but then I guess work through it. I can't remember the word off the top of my head right now.
Resilience.
Yes, yes.
Was that actually it?
Maybe, because I'm not sure.
Multitask.
Because I definitely have a lot of students right now, and I think it's also like a lot of students is like this age have a lot of, like, anxiety with things, and so I guess resiliency through all of that. Obviously, they can hopefully be doing a lot, but then they can push through all the stuff that that they may face. And this is not necessarily directed toward their musical environment, but hopefully when they graduate from here, they can tackle whatever is being put in front of them.
Yeah, there's so many life skills outside of like be good at the thing, but then you have to have all these other life things in order to, if you want to make a career out of the thing.
Right, yeah. Well, those are some really beautiful closing remarks. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
It was great to have you, members of the PAS Education Committee, Chase, Scott, Oliver, and Tom, and of course also Ben and Casey here. Thank you all very much for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thanks for
Yeah.
having us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you
All
all.
right. Take care, everybody.
See ya.